Hey, everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to episode 106 of the I Suck at Jiu Jitsu show. So today, I have the pleasure of sitting down with one of the Dirty Dozen. This is the first time that I've ever had somebody from the Dirty Dozen on my podcast. If you guys don't know what the Dirty Dozen is, if you guys don't know what the Dirty Dozen are, who the Dirty Dozen are, what the Dirty Dozen is, I don't know how I would say that. You guys don't know the Dirty Dozen, I want to tell you about them. So they are the original 12 people to get their black belt in jiu-jitsu that weren't Brazilian. So the first 12 gringos to get their black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And what's cool about my next guest, John Will, is he is the first Australian black belt. He's actually credited for kind of bringing jiu-jitsu to Australia. So if you are listening to the podcast from Australia, I suppose my next guest has something to do with that. And so I think that's really cool that, you know, you can be responsible or at least credited for bringing jiu-jitsu to an entire continent. So that's really exciting. And I promise you this one is not going to disappoint. John is so exciting, so fun. And he's also one of the most animated people I've ever interviewed. So I would recommend, if you have time, to watch this interview on YouTube over listening to it as a podcast. If you don't have time, it's still going to translate very well and be a great just audio only episode. But I can't even begin to explain it. It's the uniqueness that is John Will that makes it worth watching on YouTube. And if you guys wanted to watch that, it's at youtube.com/Josh McKinney. That is McKinney. And you could go to my channel and it will be the episode that I have out with John Will. And so before we get started into the episode, I just wanted to mention to you guys that we are running a Black Friday deal at simplifyingjujitsu.com, and you will get 40% off of anything that you purchase from the entire store with promo code Black Friday. And so you guys can check that out and look through all of the great content that we have on Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu. Hopefully we'll have some new stuff out for you guys. And it's been a while since we've been able to put out anything new on simplifyingjujitsu.com. But we have a few really cool ideas, a few really unique products that hopefully have never been done before. And we're going to go ahead and take that and try to tackle some big things in jiu-jitsu. So without further ado, though, let's jump into today's episode with John Will. John, how are you doing today, sir?
Good, yeah. Good. Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thank you for coming on. I'm really excited. Planned on asking this later, but if anyone's watching the video of this podcast, now would just be the perfect time to ask. You've got a lot of books. You read a lot of books. How many books have you read? If you had to guess, if you had to put a crazy number on it.
1,000. I don't know. It's only in the background to make me look smarter than what I am.
That's genius. That's genius.
It's a green screen. It's a green screen.
I was going to put just one Kindle behind me, just one of those e-readers behind me. Then the people know, So what would you say would be what's your go-to type of book? What do you usually listen? What do you usually like to read?
Oh, well, actually, I really science fiction. I mean, I've read a lot of, philosophy, some military stuff, but bottom line is, if you pin me down to it, Dune, the movie,
Yeah.
I read that book when I was 17. I probably read it a few times since. And that, honestly, I think fiction sometimes shapes your thinking more than nonfiction. At least that's been my experience, because it's inspiring and fires off your imagination and gets you looking at the world in different ways. So I like reading fiction. So yeah, I've got a lot of nonfiction on that bookshelf there. That green screen.
What are some fiction books that have changed your thinking?
June, this is all being recorded. See, am I allowed to do this?
Yeah, you're good. For those of you listening, he walked back to the green screen that is his all of his books and is picking something out for us.
John Stiegley. There's a couple. Shit. Yeah, so there you go. A plug for the new movie, Dune. That was a just. Have you read Dune, Josh?
I've never read Dune. I haven't seen the movie either.
Yeah, it's going to be. Yeah, it's good. I mean, I'm biased. If I had to, that's probably my favorite fiction book of all time. That was really good for me. And another one was Armor by John Stiegley. You know, just but that was all about fear and dealing with fear from a science fiction point of view. An old book written, I don't know, 30 years ago or something. The protagonist's name's Felix, so I named my kid Felix after it. So,
so it is that's obviously a favorite, then, right?
Yeah. So there are a couple: Armor by John Stiegley and Dune by Frank Herbert. Yeah, good books.
If I had to read one, which would I choose?
Dune. Pick Dune.
All right, yeah. Sweet. I'll put that on the list. I'll learn to read first, and then I'll put that on. I'll get that on the Kindle in the back.
Get it on your Kindle.
So, I just wanted to start on honestly pretty generic, but it's very interesting. How did you get started in jiu-jitsu?
Well, I started a magazine in Australia, like our equivalent of Black Belt magazine. It was called Blitz. And I started that on my Commodore 64 in my house, writing all the articles, taking the photos, pasting it all together, and then, you know, taking it to the printer and getting it printed, like a one-man show. And I did that back in the early 80s, like maybe 83 or 1984, something like that. And as editor and owner and publisher and fucking everything of that magazine, I came across, I did a little story on a Brazilian guy that came out to Australia to go surfing near where I live, a guy called Marcelo Beirin. He's dead now. He got napped. But and he came out here and he put out a challenge, like $50,000 for anyone who wanted to fight him. Now that might sound kind of normal now, but in 1984, that was not a normal thing to do. Like, you know, first of all, no rules underground fights for money was a myth. You know, the only place you saw that was on a Van Damme movie. So it was kind of like a bit of a startling thing for the community. So I wrote this little one-page story: Brazilian guy challenged 50,000. No, of course, no one took it up because no one had $50,000. That's the price of a house. But it made me, that sparked my interest. So in following that up and trying to do some research, I found the tape. You probably would have seen it. You know that fight between Hickson and Zulu?
Uh-huh.
So that's what I came across on an old VHS tape. A friend of mine in the States sent it over. And so I watched that and went, oh, that's awesome. I want to do that. And so I ended up going to Los Angeles. I was doing some training at the Jet Center, Benny Urquidez. And then and Gene LaBelle, he was teaching at Los Angeles Community College. And I found Horian Gracie in his garage at Torrance, who was teaching out of his garage. Hoist was a kid, little kid, but Horian was teaching private lessons there, just privates. There was no club, there was no academy. It was just private lessons. And so I did 5 private lessons. I booked 5 private lessons, and he taught me 4 of them. And then on the 5th lesson, he had his cousin up from Brazil, Regan Machado, who was only 18 at the time, but he was national champion, fierce competitor, probably the best in Brazil at that time. So he brought Regan up to help him with the private lesson demand. And So on my fifth lesson, Hegan taught me my fifth lesson. He had no English and I had no Portuguese, but we hit it off really well, you know, sign language. And he was just enthusiastic, and his enthusiasm and passion shone through. And so we made a connection, and and that's how I got into BJJ and connected with the Machados.
So what spiked the desire? What made you want to? Obviously, there was the, you write this article, but is there, what made you decide that that was what you wanted to do, or that martial arts even were what you wanted to chase?
Oh, well, before that, I was 30 years old when that happened. I mean, 30-ish. No, I was doing martial arts since I was 15. I did Taekwondo, got black belts in Taekwondo and Judo and Karate. And then when I finished my school, I left at 17, just up like almost 18 years of age. I left Australia, went over to Southeast Asia, and just traveled throughout Indonesia and Thailand and just training. That's all I wanted to do. And, I got into my share of fights in Asia. And doing a whole lot of weird shit that I shouldn't have been doing, like working with the cops to address drug dealers, because I was a white boy, so I could, go and buy some smack on the corner somewhere, and then we all go back to the guy's house and we jump on him and arrest him and do shit like that, all to get like a free motorbike for a week. So I had a bunch of fights, so it became very clear to me that in fights, a lot of the time, they went to the ground. I mean, almost every serious fight that I had ended up with me on the mount, punching, elbowing the guy, or punching him in the head, ground and pound. It almost always went to that. And it went to that for two reasons. Well, mainly for one reason, actually. If you are on the receiving end, like if you're the one getting out punched and out kicked and out headbutted, you grab the guy to make that stuff stop.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're in a grapple. And if you're the one that's out punching some guy, he will grab you to make it stop.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a matter of whether you want to go to the ground. The grappling was just it was a result of someone's copping damage and they wanted to stop. So you clinch, right? And so it became pretty evident to me. And then Thailand, everyone clinches almost for the same reason. So when I saw BJJ going to the ground, I just thought, well, yeah, I know that fights turn into a clinch, and I want to be better at that part of my, my skill set was lacking in that area. I'd done some freestyle wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a double leg and I had some takedown stuff, and I was athletic as all fucks. I was very athletic, and so I tend to be on top, not through any skill, but just through my athleticism, and I was really fit. So I tend to, I had a takedown, I had a couple of takedowns, but mainly double leg, and then I end up on top, and then I'd be pounding away. So when I saw BJJ, I went, here's a better way to do that, So I went down that path.
As somebody who, what age did you get your black belt?
My BJJ black belt?
Yeah, sorry.
I was in 1997, so far out. 57, 67, 77, 97, 40.
All right.
I can't do math.
So as you're getting to that age, are you starting to notice your athleticism decline?
No. I was rocking and rolling. I felt the same as I was 18 at the age of 55.
Really?
60, nearly 65. So now I feel, injuries. I mean, I'm carrying 2 injuries now and they're just hanging on. So I honestly, I've got to say that the real noticeable difference has probably only happened in my 60s.
Really?
Yeah.
So
and it's not bad. It's not a deal breaker. I mean, I still do Tabata session or, interval training, high intensity interval training session 3 times a week as a supplement. And then I'll roll on the mat with black belts and stuff. So, but I notice it now. Now I'll whinge and complain and bitch when I get home after training. Whereas I never did that 10 years ago.
All right. So do you, how often do you get to roll? How often do you roll?
I haven't been of late because with COVID hitting, in Australia, we're way more military. I didn't realize we were fucking North Korea until quite recently. But we've been locked down and like very harshly for 2 years, pretty
Yeah.
much. Again, we came back for a month and then another lockdown. So this last 2 years has really put the kibosh on my normal routine. But just recently, like a week ago, we're back on.
Oh, really?
So it's been a bit weird. Because we got 95% vaccination now.
Mm-hmm.
So with 95% of the population vaccinated in my town or even in my state, then they've switched it all back on, right? So the last 2 years is, prior to that, 4 or 5 times a week I'd roll. But now I'm easing in. So we've started last week. I got a really bad hip injury. So I haven't wrestled for about a week, so it's once a week right now, but I'll be ramping that up between now and Christmas.
And you'll try to get back to your 4 or 5 times?
Yeah.
When you train, do you still get the same enjoyment out of it as you did when you were young, when you first started?
Yes. Because I do. I mean, Josh, it's kind of weird. Like if I get this like injury and I kind of limp into training, sometimes it's like shit, it's a bastard, but I love it. I love it. I do love teaching. I think teaching, different things define different people. We define ourselves in lots of ways and we're all quite unique in the mix of things that go toward what defines us. But a very large part of what defines me to myself is my teaching. So that's something that I've missed in these last 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because normally I'd be doing 120 seminars a year, plus privates every morning, plus classes in the evenings. So that's a lot. That's just a big part of my day. Then that's just gone for the last 2 years. So, and it's felt weird. I haven't felt normal. I've suffered. No, there's been some good things about it. We go for romantic walks and like that, fucking holding hands. But teaching has defined who I am a lot. So I get a lot of enjoyment out of teaching, but I get enjoyment out of seeing ideas, coming up with ideas. I mean, you don't come up with many great ideas as a blue belt, but then as a black belt, you've got such enough knowledge base that you might be able to tweak an idea or personalize, the way you backstep into ashigarami, inside ashi heel hook or something, that the way you do the backstep, where your weight goes, and you just might be able to tweak things as a black belt. But after you've been a black belt for 20 years, you start to come up with, here's some ideas I don't think anyone's ever done. I've never seen it. So you can start to create a new. So I like that. I like it when I come up with something that seems to be unique or new. That's pretty fun. That creative process. Yeah. So I enjoy that.
Do you still feel like you're getting better as a jiu-jitsu practitioner?
My knowledge is getting better. But you got to then weigh that up against, I'm not as athletic as I was when I was a killer 55-year-old. That's going to sound funny to some people, but that's the truth. Yeah, I think one way that I'm a lot better now is I like to organize myself. So I'm very organized. And a part of that is, like, if we're going to talk about anything, jiu-jitsu, like X-guard or omoplata, or you pick a topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So say we pick omoplata as a topic. So you and I, we get together and we write everything we know about omoplata on a whiteboard, like a whole bunch of entries, a whole bunch of little ways to overcome the problems that your partner will throw in front of you, ways to get around that. And then if the omoplata is not working, are you just throwing the arm away and using it to get a back take, for example? Like, where are you going from a failed omoplata? So we write all that shit up on a board. But then an obvious question should arise. Out of all that stuff, if you come to me and say, I'm interested in omoplata, what would I pick as being the first thing? Like, if there's 30 things on that board, why would I choose this bit to be the first, right? And then what would I pick as second, and what would I pick as third? So I want to organize it into an order. And then you might say, well, hang on, why that order? And I would want to have a rationale for why I put that before that. And I would want to be really clear on that rationale. So I've done that for most topics that I can think of in jiu-jitsu. So in that way, I'm a lot better than I was, say, 20 years ago. I'm very organized. If you could name a topic, I could rattle off, that should be first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and that interlinks with this other subject over here. So that's something that I think you can't do that 3 years in, you haven't got, there's just not enough parts of the puzzle to be able to do it. So in that way, I'm improving.
If I ask you triangle, what would be the first thing that someone should learn if they want to do a triangle?
Well, if you say triangle, the things that go into that larger category are das, anaconda, katagatame, and triangle with the legs, right? So all those things are in the same family, in that you've got a head and an arm stuck inside a structure. And so the way I would start with that, I'm assuming you're talking about the triangle with the legs, right? So, but I don't think of it like that. I think that they're all the same. It's not so much about what I'm doing, it's about what's happening to you that's important to me. So I immediately think das, anaconda, katagatame, and triangle. That's four. So with the legs, triangle, I would say the basic stuff, just from the guard. And the first triangle I would teach is your opponent doesn't know what they're doing, and they try to pass your guard with one arm out and one arm in, and so you don't go for the whole triangle, right? You don't lock the triangle structure. You cross your ankles. You just cross your ankles and squeeze your knees so that you maintain one arm in, one arm out. Because if you try to go straight to the end, it's too slow and there's too much space, and that's going to allow you to lose a lot of triangles. So you snap those ankles shut, and once you snap the ankle shut, then you're going to control the head to keep his posture broken. And then you're going to, do all the other little bits to make it happen. So, that's, and then you build from there. And then, so that's the first one's, what's the perfect scenario for a triangle? And then after you've taught that, it will be, well, what if it's not perfect? How do you make it happen? If he's got both of his arms in, he's not making any mistakes, right? And then how do we make it even worse? Like if we were, if you're a parent and you want to go and teach your kid how to ride a bike, you're going to put the training wheels on and you're going to find a sunny day and a flat bit of grass. You're not going to take him down this BMX fucking jump day one unless you're an idiot, because he's going to have a bad experience. So you make the first experience perfect. What's the perfect scenario for riding a bike? And then quickly after that, okay, let's make it a little imperfect. Now it's got a little hills. Now it's rain. Now it's sleet. Now it's show. Now people are trying to knock you off that with a BB gun. So you slowly ramp it up. You don't start with the hill and the BB gun. So I think that's a mistake a lot of people make. They don't start at the right spot. It's got to be, for das or sticking on triangles, what's the perfect position for you to do a das choke on me? What shape would you like to be? You'd like me to be on my side with my arm out like that, right? So we start there. And then we make it less perfect, downright difficult, and we go from there.
So for you, when you see the way that jiu-jitsu is taught now, obviously everyone teaches differently, but kind of more as a whole, do you see any, besides people trying to start too deep into these positions, or not starting with, I guess, the easiest scenario, do you notice any other things that you would say people could be doing better as teachers or as coaches?
Many things. Oh, yes. I mean, there's a lot of really simple class structure and design fundamentals that a lot of the amateur instructors, I think, fall over on. And no fault of theirs, because if you're only teaching twice a week, like seriously, twice a week, how long is it going to take you to do 10,000 classes? I mean, you do the math.
It's going to take you a really long time, man.
So, and I don't think I think it's 10,000 classes is about, the old idea of 10,000 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, as a rough parallel to that, I think you need to be doing those kind of numbers and then beyond 20,000, 30,000 to really start to go, wow, maybe I should do it differently, because you start to see enough patterns. If you taught that thing 8 different ways, you start to realize, hang on, I taught a group that way. I got a different outcome than if I taught it that way. And you start to notice things. So teaching twice a week, just as a hobbyist, it's no wonder to me that people make a lot of fundamental errors. What are some of them? Instructors on the mat, everyone's circled around him. He's demonstrating a move. He's immediately eliminated 50% of the classroom. So that's a really dumb idea. Right? So he should have them on one side. And then he can then turn and adjust as he or she needs to, demonstrate the technique. So everyone gets it on board. And then, so that's just one thing that almost everyone makes that mistake. It's like, my God. They demonstrate a technique in its entirety. Here's the technique. Let's do an X guard sweep, an X guard technical stand-up sweep or something. Demonstrating the technique in its entirety, sure, because you've got to give the context and the big picture. But then they then say go. That'd be like, if I was teaching cooking, don't do anything. Stand there, watch me make the omelet. No. Don't do anything. Watch me make the entire omelet, cook it up on the plate, knife and fork. Now go. What? Right? I'll play a song with all the chords. Don't do anything. Go. So we don't do that with anything else. But in jiu-jitsu, they go, here's the X guard sweep. Got it. Oh, you would like to see it again? Here it is again. Now go. No. You've got to walk the class through, all the steps. Say there's 6 steps. Let's just pick a number in the basic X guard technical stand-up sweep. So you get everyone there ready on step 1. And when they're all on step 1, step 2, do this, and 3 and 4. So you walk them through the process. And you do that as many times as it takes to look around the room and see that everyone's hit all the steps of the process. And only then, and that might only be 3 or 4 runs through, but only then do you then say, okay, now release them into the wild, now go do it, and then they do it. So that's another common mistake, demonstrating a technique in its entirety without the steps. We don't do that with anything else. Mm-hmm. You don't do that with building a house, flying a plane, surgery, climbing a mountain. You don't do it. But in jiu-jitsu, they do it. That's another amateur mistake.
Well, let me ask you this about teaching. So if you're starting with somebody brand new, do you have some certain things that you believe that they should be taught to start with? Or is it more of what the class that they're coming into is about?
No. So the answer to your question is yes. Of course, there should be something. Like if I rocked up at university and I wanted to do an engineering degree, college, you say. If I walked up at college, I want to do an engineering degree. would we get the big textbook and just fucking open it at a random page and start? No. Right? So again, why do that with jiu-jitsu? Of course, there has to be something that we consider to be, or that we mutually agree that are fundamentals. So how it works in my school, so all schools are different, but how it works in my school is someone comes along tonight, there will be people there and they're just starting out. We have an introduction class just for those people. They are not put into general population. That's crazy. I mean, then no one wins. They don't get what they need. And the guys that have been there for 3 years don't get what they need. Yeah. You have an introduction class. For me, that's someone that's from 0 to 3 months training. I don't care whether there's 2 people in it or 20 people in it. In my school, there's always somewhere between 15 and 20 people in that class. It's kind of field of dreams-ish. It's if you build it, they will come. So the argument will go up, oh, but I haven't got enough people beginning to, yeah, you never will, mate. You've got to have the class and then you'll fill it, right? They come into that class and I have 12 pre-designed lessons that I endlessly cycle through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I start again, 1, 2, 3. I've got a little book, spiral bound book in my office, and I turn the page. So when I go in there tonight, I look, oh, I taught class 6 last Thursday, Tuesday. So I turn the page and I teach lesson 7. When I hit to and it never ends. So it doesn't matter then when the beginner comes along, it doesn't matter when they start. They could start at lesson number 6. They're going to do all of that and they have to cycle through those 12 lessons 2 times minimum to get 1 stripe on their belt and move up into the novice jiu-jitsu class. So it doesn't matter whether you start on class 9 or class 1, it's irrelevant. You're going to cycle through that 2 times. I know you've done those 12 fundamental classes at least 2 times each. So when they come into my novice class, everyone has my fundamentals, my version of what I think those fundamentals are. They've got them down, and they're now in the novice class for the next couple of stripes. Then they're in the intermediate class, and then a couple of years later they're in the advanced class. So,
what are some of the things that someone would learn in your fundamentals class?
They would learn. Well, I'm going to use terminology. You'll know what it means, Josh, when I explain it, but you might not know the name. So the mount to back drill. So staying on the mount and your opponent turns over, taking their back, seatbelt grip. Done, number 1. Number 2, top control drill. Side control, north-south, side control, mount, back off to where you started. So 1 lap. The re-guarding drill. You pass my guard, I put you back in. You pass my guard, I put you back in. You pass my guard, I put you back in. And then what we call the seed drill, which is what started the whole BJJ art. You're on the mount. Upa, I take you off, but now I'm in your guard. I pass your guard, I'm in side control. I go from side control to the mount, and I've completely reversed the situation. And now you do it. So they're the first, that's the 4, that's it. No subs, nothing. It's all those positions for 3 months. Now, with that, we also have gloves on, punching, like a barrage of punches, shelling up, learning to cover in till we connect to their chest, shoulder into the chest, side clinch, and then some back takes and a double leg takedown. So we learn to be able to close the distance against a barrage of punches and get them down to the ground. So that's it.
So then you said you have 3 other classes. What is kind of the difference between the novice, the intermediate, and the advanced?
Well, so the introduction class, which is what we were talking about, that's 12 weeks in there. Then my novice class. So at the end of that introduction, you get 1 stripe on your white belt, right? So 1 stripe. When you come into the novice class, you're in there for another 2 stripes, right? So you might be in there for another 9 months, a year even. I'm a bit old school. And then you're in the intermediate class, which is after that, which is 3rd stripe and 4th stripes. And then you're in the advanced class when you're a blue belt or not. But in my school, it's 2.5 years to get a blue belt. So.
What does the advanced class will look like? Is there still a structured curriculum to that?
No. So we're highly structured for all the stripes of the white belt to blue belt. So, every blue belt, I know what they know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a minimum of requirements, there's like 32 things that they have to know. But by the time in those 2 years, they know more than 32 things, they know 100 things, but there's 32 they have to know that they're test on, if you like. But once they get into the advanced class, which is, blues, purples, browns, and blacks, I mean, there might be 10 black belts on my class tonight. Then no, we just do themes. So we do themes. So, it might be butterfly guard for 3 or 4 weeks, and then it might be De La Riva for, then it might be omoplatas, and then it might, whatever. So, and we'll stick on themes. And as a very, very rough idea, roughly 12 themes a year.
Okay. So for you, I'm really curious with your advanced classes. How are they? Do you guys positional spar more in them? Do you just kind of spar live? Do you keep with that theme that you were?
Okay. So again, it changes, right? But if I had to say like the most common way they're designed is there'll be a bit of a warm up at the start of the class. Now the warm up is not jumping jacks and shit. It's people punching you in the head and you clinching. Mm-hmm. It'll be off the wall. We have a bunch of circling around. So smash them into a wall and they've got to duck under, go behind, smash you in the wall, then rip you down to the ground. So the warm ups are pretty dynamic. Then after the warm up, we'll go on drilling a technique. It might be, say, I don't know, Das Anaconda, the relationship between Das Anaconda. For example, so I'll teach Das, then I'll teach the Anaconda, then I'll teach the way those two things can work off each other. And then we'll spend maybe 25, 30 minutes drilling those, first of all by the numbers, and then just freestyling it and going for it. And then the last half an hour will be free sparring, free rolling, with not an emphasis, but everyone in the culture I have on my mat is try to do in the rolling at some point, try to execute the technique that we just spent 30 minutes of our lives learning, right? So don't just go back to your A game. I mean, try to do that.
So when it comes to, and that would be the class that you would normally train in when you're training, like that would be the people that you normally roll with.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to that, when it comes to deciding on what theme, what should be done for the next 4 weeks, how do you go about that?
That's pretty random. I mean, sometimes it's based on what I'm seeing on the mat. Like I'll try to fix something. You know what? It seems that, we're all up there doing knee slice passes and people are dropping the knee shield in there and catching the knee shield guard. So, you know what? Let's work on passing. Let's work on overcoming the knee shield. So it's just, if I see a pattern emerging on the mat, that's a pretty strong motivation to choose a theme. But I try to balance it, obviously, so if we're working on a guard for a month, I mean, it might sound boring, but, because there's a lot of entries, like how are you going to get into that thing, Mm-hmm. And then all the things you can do from that. So, I mean, think about the ways you're going to get into Spider Guard, and then all the things you can do from Spider Guard. And then, so there's a lot. And then is there a relationship between Spider Guard and De La Riva guard, for example? Are there other guards? So there's a lot of stuff. And so we've done that kind of stuff for a month, that's bottom focused, then the next month I'm very likely to go on the top and be doing something to kind of balance it out. Then we've been doing upper body stuff. So, hey, we better get into some legs. Let's do some heel hooks and stuff for a month. So it tends to be, it's not always a month, some topics, you can get a good portion of it done in 2 weeks or something. If you're getting very specific, you can get it done. Like Americana, like I'm not spending a month on Americana, but you can do Americana from cut the guitar from like switch-based side control, we call it, but like a BJJ Kezakatame, where you hold the leg, right? So you can do Americana from there, and then you can get rolled over, and you can do it from the bottom, inverted, and you can do. So there are some, but still, you can get most of that stuff done in 2 weeks. So some things are complicated, and some are easy.
So you talked a few times, we talked about it with a triangle and, doing head and arm chokes, darces, anacondas. And just we were talking about Spider and De La Hiva. You talked about like the relationship between moves, like meaning moves that have a lot of similarities to them or a lot of the same concepts or ideas. At what point did you start to notice that these jiu-jitsu moves that we're doing have relationships? And did you notice that it helped you a lot realizing that?
It absolutely helped realizing it, to answer the second part of your question, in several ways. But one of the main ways it helps, Josh, is that if you have an idea in your head, like a technique, a specific technique, right? Then what's going to keep it in your head? Now, there's two things mainly. One is if you're when you first roll after you've learned it and you hit that thing 3 times, you will keep it forever. Right? That goes to you taking ownership of the move. But if you don't, it's a Thursday night, it's your last night of training until next Tuesday or something, right? Then, and if you just learn this technique and then you don't hit it in sparring, then 4 days of your life gets put in between when you learned it and your next sparring session. And not only that, the next sparring session you have, you're learning something different. So it's now number 185 down the list of the things that's just happened to you over the weekend, this and that. The chances of you owning that technique are dramatically reduced. So one of the things that allows you to take ownership is successful implementation of the move as soon as possible after you learned it, right? We have to agree on that. That's pretty obvious to everybody. But I think that's less obvious is if you have a new idea in your head, a new technique, if you can connect that technique to other things, if you can throw out a few anchors, even if they're not legit, like even if they're spurious or that's a stretch, it doesn't matter. It's an anchor. You've anchored it to this other technique. You've anchored it to that. It's like a DAS, but upside down. If you do that, then the more anchors you have it in your head from a neurological point of view, then you are much likely to keep that thing in your memory until when you can implement it in sparring. So if it's just a lone technique that you've learned and you haven't learned to connect it to other themes and other techniques that you've learned, it's just sitting there like an orphan in your brain. That's like a boat in the harbor with no anchor. I don't know where it's going to be tomorrow morning when I rock up. But if I throw down one anchor, that's pretty good. If I've got 4 anchors, it's going to be there. So I think that's, to answer your question, that's one reason why it's really good to connect to other things, just as a way to remember the goddamn thing. So that later on, you're more likely to apply, because you can only apply what you can remember. So that's, and the other part of your question, when did I do that? Certainly not till after black belt. I was 10 or 12 years in before I started to do that.
Do you feel like because of that, because you now have a deeper understanding of jiu-jitsu, that you can get guys better faster than you were able to?
Oh, yes. But also there are other factors. I didn't know the language, Josh. I was in Brazil. They're speaking Portuguese. I don't speak Portuguese. So I'm just looking and learning. I mean, I was pretty good at that because I'd spent 10 years in Asia looking. I just pick out who's the best guy in the class. What's he doing that no one else is doing? I'll do that. So that's what you do, right? You just compare and model. So I was okay at doing that, but it would have been better had I got a technical explanation. Would have saved a lot of time. So my students have the benefit of we share a common language.
That's huge.
Oh, it is really. I mean, yeah. So this generation, of course, they've got to be learning things better. Meaning more quickly. And then we have so much more information now. There was no internet when I started. There's no internet. So we have YouTube and things, podcasts. And so we've got all this information that is now available. So it's not just the fact that I have teaching experience that allows me to get my students better. It's just that the landscape is just better. It's just a better landscape now.
So we actually did not, I don't think we got to talk about this, but this was something that I found in research that I wanted to bring up. And you kind of credit sometimes your health and well-being to fasting. And I just wanted to kind of hear do you still fast?
Which reminds me, babe, we're starting tonight. Just talk to my wife. Yeah. So cook a good dinner. So, yeah, what we do, my wife and I usually, we don't just do it when we feel like doing it. I think that's not a good way to do anything. What you want to do is create habits. So if you're in the mood or you're not in the mood, that's fucking irrelevant. Right. So I like to it's like savings. I'll save money when I'm feeling good. No, don't do that. Save 15% of everything you earn, whether you're feeling good or not, whether you earn $100 or $10,000 this week, it doesn't matter. You save 10% or 15% or, whatever it is. You got to create a habit. That way you take your mood out of it. Right? Do I feel like cleaning my teeth today? you don't do that. You just fucking do it. So what we do with the fasting is we do it at the start of each calendar month. So we do the first 48 hours of each calendar month. So that's 12 times a year, 2 days. So 24 days a year we're not eating. So rather than doing a big 10-day fast or this and that, it's just better to do 24 days. It's better than 10. So I'd rather do 12 little fasts than one giant one, when I feel like it. So now what I had to remind my wife is we don't do that. Like we would tend to do it I'm not super strict on the first. It doesn't have to be the first of the month. Today's the 4th. So it's here in Australia where I live, it's Thursday night. So after dinner tonight, we won't eat Friday. We won't eat till Saturday night. So Friday is not a day. I've only got a Tabata session in the morning that I've got nothing else on. So it's easier on that. So on that day. So we're a bit flexible.
What do you notice physically about that?
So, there are all these benefits like autophagy and cell regeneration and these different things. I don't care about that so much. What I care about is what I feel, like experientially, what I feel. There's 2 things that I want to stand by, Josh. What? Nothing. You've interrupted our podcast with nothing. I'm going to say hello. So she might have, it's she being my wife. This is my wife, Melissa. Melissa, Josh.
Hi, Melissa. It's nice to meet you.
You too.
Back in the kitchen.
Oh.
So what I feel is it's just good to give your stomach a rest. Like, like we rest right after working out. You rest after if you went to a competition, but people nowadays, we're all rich, right? I mean, even the poorest of us is rich comparatively rich to at any other time in history. We can all just get up go to a refrigerator and eat right now. That is something we've come to take for granted. That is a luxury, right? So we're eating 3 times a day, blah, 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 blah. Oh my God, give it a rest. So I like the idea of it. You have 2 days where I'm going, oh my God, I'm not having to digest food. That's kind of, I like food, but that rest is really good. That's one thing. And the other thing, a much more simple thing is whatever you eat after a 48-hour fast, you appreciate it.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh, wow, a fucking taco tastes that good. Right? And that's really nice because, you know, if you eat all the time, whatever you want, you can eat it, you know, it's like you're losing that appreciation of it. Remember someone told me a story, I forget, you know, 30 years ago, and I like fly fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And a fly fishing instructor of mine told me a story, you know, guy dies. He's been led an okay life, wakes up, thinks there's a beautiful green field, little brook running through it, butterflies flying around. He's got a fishing rod on the ground, one he's always wanted. He goes, fuck, I'm in heaven. Picks up the rod, one cast into this tiny little stream, 10-pound trout, scoffs the fly, hooks on. He's never caught one in his life. He goes, oh my God, 10-pound trout, fucking heaven. Cast one more time, 10-pound trout. One more time, 10-pound trout. One more time, 10-pound trout. Guy walks out of the bushes and says, what makes you think you're in heaven, bro? It was hell. You know, and the definition of hell being, you know, it's only meaningful because you've got to fly fish for 30 years and you've got to walk 10 kilometers into the wilderness. You've got to have your pack and all that shit to hunt that trout. You fail year after year after year after year. And 20 years in, you get one. That's what makes it valuable. If you get one every cast, it has no value. Right? And it's the same thing with food. Long-winded old man story. But, you know, what makes the BJJ black belt valuable? The difficulty and challenge of all that training that we have to do to get it, that's what imbues that belt with meaning. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what imbues it. The thing that imbues it with meaning is the difficulty that we have to go through to get it. If it was free, like some Taekwondo school or something, you know, then it has no value, right? So, and it's the same thing with food. So it's nice to remind myself once a month that, gee, that banana tastes pretty fucking good and I'm lucky to have it. I know that sounds kind of funny, but that's actually probably the best thing about fasting for me. Yeah.
I actually, I'm a very big intermittent faster, and I completely agree. That is when you get to break your fast, you recognize like, okay, this is what being hungry feels like. And it's good to remind yourself, you know, it's just like we remind ourselves in jiu-jitsu all the time. This is what being smashed by someone who's way bigger than you feels like, you know, this is what these things, it's just good to have that knowledge and know what we are afraid of, to know what it actually is. What is your go-to? You're going to break your 48-hour fast. What's going to be your normal meal or your favorite meal, I guess?
Well, my wife's a really, really good cook. She really likes cooking. That's something that she's really great at and likes doing it. Seems to do it effortlessly. I just like really simple things. A lot of the time, it'll just be a bit of salmon, baked salmon, white rice, sriracha sauce. I mean, you got to understand where I was raised. You know, I was raised in the slums of Southeast Asia, so I'm a simple guy. We went to a restaurant the other week. We paid $800 for the meal, and you know, it's one of these taste testing little bit. You know, a fucking rose petal with drops of shit on it. Fuck that. When we come home, I said, baby, cook me 2 lamb chops. I like simple things. But yeah, I like salmon, rice, and sriracha. So that's one of, I really like that. Or sometimes chicken tacos. So that's what I would tend to. Usually like one of those two things is what I would tend to break my fast with.
All right.
Most probably, I think more often than not, we have salmon and
Okay.
rice. Mm.
That sounds solid. That's a great way to break a fast, is a nice piece of fish. So
crispy baked. Yeah.
mhm.
Now I'm hungry.
Me too, man. I think I'm at hour like 28 or something. As soon as I get off the podcast, I'm going to get some dinner. So
Yeah, a good man, 28. Yeah. I misspoke before. We do 44 hours.
44.
Yes. Only not because there's a magic number there, but
Mm-hmm.
only because tonight, we won't eat till 8:00, 8:30. It'll be after we come home from the mat. So we'll eat, and that'll be the last meal. So I'll stop eating at 10:00 tonight because I'll snack. I always snack after my
Mm-hmm.
So 10:00, I'll stop, and then not the day after, but the day after that, I eat at 6 p.m. when the sun goes down. So that happens. That time frame just happens to be 44 hours.
Okay. Yeah. Have you ever gone longer than that?
Yeah, we went to 66 or something once, and my experience was that it's like the after something like 30 hours to 48 hours is a little difficult,
Mm-hmm.
meaning not quite as sharp, body maybe switching into ketosis,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit vague, but beyond that, it all comes really fucking good. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so 60 hours is you're feeling way better than 48. And I suspect it's because you've switched over into ketosis,
Mm-hmm.
and you're burning fats, and so your brain sharpens up again. But I think in that that period in between, it can be a bit
I know you feel cloudy, you feel slow. I'm not, don't like that. Do you train while you fast?
Yeah, I don't do anything different. Yeah.
So I always like to finish
44 hours. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
man.
You got it. Can't go 44 hours without training,
No. What I mean is it's just 44 hours without food.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, snap out of it. There's people all over the planet, millions of them, going 44 hours without food right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and they fight for their lives. You can go train.
Yeah.
So I always like to finish with the same question. So I was going to ask you, what is, if any, what is some of the best jiu-jitsu advice that you have ever gotten?
There's a lot. But if an easy, quick one is, there is no such thing as a bad position. So that might seem counterintuitive at first. Being under the mount is a bad position. No, it's not if you're there. If you're there, that is precisely where you need to be every night until you can no longer be, until you can make it that you're not there. So wherever you are is exactly where you need to be. So don't be bitching about it. All positions are good. Underneath side control, underneath the mount, that's precisely where you need to be if you're finding yourself there. That was pretty good advice, because that made me realize that prior to getting that advice, if you said, how'd you go at training tonight? I would answer based on how I went in the rolling. Oh, I was dominating, crushing. I had a good night. I was getting crushed. I had a bad night. What? I don't want to relegate myself to having half my life bad nights. Mm-hmm. So it's all good. It's all good no matter where you are. That is precisely where you need to be. And when you're under those bad positions, don't put your focus on escaping, because that's silly, because you've already proved that you can't by being there, right? So don't try to escape. Try to do this instead. Improve your situation by 5%. Can you do that? Oh, I can do that. Then repeat, then repeat, then repeat, and then you're out. You're $100,000 in debt. Can I get out of debt? No, you can't, because if you're that much of a genius to get out of $100,000 in debt like that, you wouldn't have fucking got in debt. You've already proved you're an idiot. So here's what you can do. You can improve your situation by 5% by not going out and getting pissed and drunk and eating pizza this weekend. And you can save that money and put it off your debt. Improve your situation by 5%. Repeat, repeat, repeat. That's good advice.
That is excellent advice. That is very good advice. John, is there anything you want to say to finish?
No, I'm fine. I'm good. So thank you for having me. Nice to chat to you. And I hope someone gets something out of it.
I am sure that there will be a lot of people that do. Thank you so much for being on.
Good man. Thank you, Josh.
And that is the episode. I told you guys it's a really fun and interesting episode. It's a very unique episode. I was really happy to do this one. It's funny. We actually, because, after 2 years of running this podcast, I still cannot comprehend time zones. And we ended up doing it like after I had taught a bunch of classes throughout the day, and it was kind of late at night, where in America it was the morning for him. And so I did it on not enough rest, expecting to be really tired throughout the podcast. But John is so upbeat and so energizing that I didn't even notice it. Didn't even think twice about it, to be honest. And I really hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I know that was one of the ones that I had just a blast doing, but it's so much fun seeing somebody that's dedicated their life to martial arts and they're happy about it. They have no regret from it, right? And as somebody who is younger, who's dedicating their life to martial art, his life to martial arts, is it's always motivating to see somebody who's done it and says, yeah, this is what you hope it will be. This, spreading the gospel of jiu-jitsu is worth it and something worth dedicating your life to. And so, it's a really fun one for me to get to sit down with John. And that is pretty much all I have for you guys today. Before I go, do not forget, you can check out simplifyingjujitsu.com anytime before Cyber Monday. You will be able to use the promo code Black Friday to get 40% off of anything in the entire store. And so you guys go to simplifyingjujitsu.com to check that out. If not, thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys got something out of it. And I hope that it helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. What's up, guys? Josh here again. I just wanted to give you a little more information on some of the other content that I produce that isn't just the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. If you are wanting more information on how to become more efficient and effective in your jiu-jitsu training, the number one thing that I always recommend to people is my Patreon page, the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show Patreon page, because we release a 5 to 15 minute exclusive episode every single Saturday. This is called Suck Less Saturday, and it is completely focused on being for your jiu-jitsu training, for your jiu-jitsu mindset, and for your jiu-jitsu progression. And so what we'll do is a quick but deep dive on a different thought, idea, or training method every single Saturday. And you can only get this on our Patreon page. I also have a few spots open, depending on what time you're listening to this podcast, for my Suck Less coaching. What that is a monthly cost to get a monthly meeting with me where we meet over Zoom and set some goals based on what you are trying to accomplish in jiu-jitsu and set some different training methods to help you get there. There's nothing like this online right now. There is no jiu-jitsu coaching that teaches you how you should be training, and it is exclusively on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Patreon page. Also, if you guys want to just be in more contact or you want to learn a little more about my ideas in jiu-jitsu, I highly recommend that you sign up for Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu. It is a free ebook. It is at simplifyingjujitsu.com. And what we do is we break down the top 5 positions, the essential 5 positions of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. These are the 5 positions where most jiu-jitsu, 90+% of jiu-jitsu takes place in. And we break down how to train them, how long you should be training them, and what order you can train these things to progress faster and easier with your jiu-jitsu. And lastly, if you guys would just give this show a subscribe and a share, it would be very greatly appreciated. Also, you can review us on certain podcast platforms. If you guys want to keep up with me personally, you can follow me at my Instagram at the Josh McKinney. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you for listening. I hope that you guys listen to the next one.